own breath sometimes when my son cries at night. He doesn't have to describe those things he fears in the dark because my grandmother told me the world will never be safe for us when she refused to say the name of that place we come from. Minidoka, I say to him. My ancestors lay fingers across my lips. Do not be ashamed because we are alive, because the birds will one day pluck us clean. One of the things about this book is, it's not my experience. So I had to figure out, how do I tell stories, to write poems about this experience, which is not mine? How do I write poems about this experience that, we just didn't talk about in my family? There's a lot of silence surrounding this. So I had to figure out how to fill the silence. And I figured I'd fill the silence by just explaining how things are. They say this is how fire was invented. This is a poem about where we come from. It's called, They Say This Is How the Crane Wife Fell. It's about survival and beast song, concentration camps, about our ancestors falling in love. This is a tilt of lightning, they say, through an old man's stomach, a jag of memory striking down the pear trees sprouting from his chest. This poem is called, They Say This Is How the Moon Remembers Heaven. They say this is how the foxwife lost her brood. They say this is how the witch burned. This is an ancient telephone call, the creation myth of an extinct people. This is a story. Chew it until the words flicker out on your tongue. This poem is called, They Say This Is How the Ghosts Feel. It's about not knowing how the ghosts feel. This poem's called, They Say This Is How the Ghosts Feel. 1. Minidoka. I never say your name out loud except when measuring my family's ghosts against the razor wire still wrapped around all our tongues. 2. Minidoka. I cannot contain your name in my mouth. When I speak it, each syllable is a storm of crows, feathers, bone, appetite. 3. There's a flock of dark birds that circle my house while I sleep. Their jagged song more death camp than dreamscape, more car crash than moonrise. 4. In the dark, my father tries to explain what Minidoka means. I can almost read his lips as he releases his lonely howl. 5. I say your name, but it doesn't mean anything to people whose families were not left wrecked out on the prairie. So I call you America and let that name sit on my tongue like dust. 6. Sometimes things aren't as terrifying when they're so far away. I say your name, America. I say your name, America. I say your name and wait for you to appear in my yard. Shotgun, noose, barbed wire. 7. In the dark, my grandfather patrols up and down city streets, shaking every door to make sure it's secure. He says, America, and then we're all locked out. 8. America. Sometimes I don't understand what your name means. 4 syllables for home, for not home, for bombs bursting in air, for believing we're all bombs. 9. In my dream, my son is learning to talk, but all he says is Minidoka. He's learning to walk, but he just walks in circles. One of the things I do in the book is I try to imagine my grandparents in camp at Minidoka, but I didn't know them back then because I was not born. So I imagine them as these monsters. My grandfather's the ogre. My grandmother's the witch, because that's what America does to people when you demonize them and lock them away. They say this is how the ogre lost his heart. Mortality begins with memory in one hand, inside an egg. That photo of a bride before the war, that shadow in the ogre's chest. He reveals his empty palm, ditched it all before the pigeons arrived to roost in his pockets. A man can fashion a wardrobe of slick gestures, a legerdemain to keep his house from caving in, his body from crumpling into heaps of overcoats. He summons a bouquet of doves from his hat, a sleeve full of rabbits, quiet and wary for hawks. Hands can be stealthy, lovesick foxes or tiny owls who doubt the night. Memory can be palmed in other locations. A silent birdcage, a maiden name, evenings spent sitting with a vanishing woman. Try to contain it all in nimble fingers like miserable yoke. I've got a few more I'll read. This one's called, again, just explaining stuff. They say this is how the heart works. Quiet and furious labor. They say this is how the heart works to safeguard a home. Sanctuary or confinement. They say this body ached for transformation. Transformation into beasts who refuse to be eaten. Men have locked their bones in upright configurations, patient now for new trees. Women have grown accustomed to beautiful hair, long for fresh plumage to set the backwoods ablaze. The cranes steer clear of me, afraid of fingers that tear tail feathers from fragile forms, in fear of fishermen who shear wings from seabirds. They say this is how my grandfather lost his tail, how my grandmother lost her will to sail over seascapes. Fear is shame. Goddamn moon. This is how my body wants to curdle something sweet, how my skeleton aches to be filed into points. This is how my teeth chew my name. I'm going to read two more poems. This is the closest thing to a title poem. They say this is how the bone sings. In Personal Justice Denied, the report of the Commission on Wartime Relocation of Internment of Civilians, the commission writes that the Nisei, the second generation Japanese, told their children, they said, don't make waves, don't stand out. You're different enough anyways. They say this is how the bone sings. There's a place along the border where children sleep in the dark like there was once a prairie in Idaho where my father learned what Minidoka means. A concentration camp under that scar-spangled sky, all our ancestors bound in razor-wired and splintered wood, the moon's careless gaze over all of us. There's a place where the boys are still wrestling wild boars, bare-fisted, where girls are murdered, gathering jonquils in dry meadows. Listen, the night is filled with the owl's grief for tiny bodies concealed in unimaginable places. There's a story about a woodsman who ate meat without bones for weeks without ever wondering where his children were. Before I die, let all the children carve a flight of flutes from my ribcage, a symphony revealing every wound on our fathers' bodies, a song proclaiming we will never be dead. So here's one more poem. Thanks so much, Diane, for putting this on and inviting me. I'm really happy to be here, and excited to be here with Enzo and Charlotte and all of you. So thank you for being here. It's a Tuesday night. Y'all could be anywhere if it wasn't for pandemic. So thanks for being here. This last poem is called Looking Outside Airplane Windows. And I wrote this poem on a plane, looking outside the window. So thanks y'all for being here. Looking outside airplane windows. I expect to see that boy in the clouds, sad-faced, barbed wire tattoo ablaze where no one can see it. Not a tattoo, but a scar wrapped around his belly like a belt cinched tight to hold his body together. Every cloud dissolves one day, leaving so many boys in the sky, hanging, waiting to fall back to earth. Girls too, hearts where their stomachs should be, guts twisted into brambles now for the body's deep sorrow, because we have so many words for clouds. Father, grandfather, and one day, son. We spend our lives searching for your shapes. You already resemble those shapes we know by heart. Thank you.